Imagine someone gave you power over another person. Not real power at first, just a role, a uniform, a few rules, and a room where everyone expects you to act differently. You are still you. Same face, same memories, same life outside the room. But now people look at you differently. They wait for you to give orders. They expect you to become the role. So the question is simple. How long would it take before you started acting like the person they told you to be? In 1971, a group of college students walked into a psychology experiment at Stanford University. They were not criminals. They were not prison guards. They were ordinary young men who answered an ad for a study about prison life. They were screened, selected, and divided into two groups. Some would become prisoners, and some would become guards. The prison was not real. It was built in the basement of a university building. The guards were not trained officers. The prisoners had not committed crimes. Everyone knew it was an experiment, at least at the beginning. That is what made the experiment so disturbing. The fake prison did not stay fake for very long. The prisoners were given numbers. The guards were given uniforms, sunglasses, and authority. Almost immediately, the room changed. It was still the same basement and the same people, but the roles began to fill the space like smoke. At first, it probably felt like acting like a strange game or a performance for science, but human beings are strange creatures. Give someone a costume and they may start standing differently. Give someone a number and they may start feeling smaller. Give someone rules and they may stop asking who made them. Give someone permission and they may discover a version of themselves they did not know was waiting. The guards began enforcing order. The prisoners began resisting. Then the guards pushed harder and the prisoners pushed back less. The fake prison started creating real fear, real stress, and real humiliation. As the days passed, the experiment became harder to separate from reality. This is the version of the story most people know. Normal people were placed into a prison setting, some were given power, others had power taken away. Within days, the situation became so disturbing that the experiment had to be stopped. For many people, the lesson seemed obvious. Power corrupts, roles take over, and ordinary people can become cruel faster than they want to believe. That idea is terrifying because most people do not imagine themselves as the guard. They imagine they would be different, kinder, stronger, and brave enough to refuse. But the experiment seemed to whisper something darker. Maybe you would not refuse. Maybe you would adjust. Maybe you would laugh along because everyone else was laughing. Maybe you would tell yourself it was only a role. It did not show monsters, it showed students. It did not happen in a dungeon. It happened at a university, and it began with instructions, but there is a problem. The famous version may be too simple, and later critics began asking a different question. What if the experiment did not simply reveal cruelty? What if it helped create it in a clean experiment? Researchers are supposed to observe without pushing people toward the result they expect. But this experiment was not that clean. Philip Zimbardo, the psychologist who led the study, was not only observing the prison, he also acted as prison superintendent. That matters because the person studying the system was also part of the system. He was not just watching the fake prison, he was helping run it. Once the researcher becomes part of the world he is studying, the experiment stops being only an experiment. It becomes a performance with a director. Later critics argued that the guards may not have simply discovered cruelty on their own. They may have understood that harsh behavior was expected. They may have felt pressure to play the role properly. They may have been responding not only to power, but to the situation the researchers had built around them. But it does mean the lesson is not as clean as people were told. Put normal people in a fake prison, give them roles, give them expectations, place them under authority. And some may begin performing the cruelty they think the situation demands. That is one of the scariest things about human behavior. We like to believe our character is fixed. We like to believe that if we are good people in normal life, we will stay good people in strange situations. But situations do not always ask for permission. They pull on us quietly, changing what feels normal, allowed, and expected. A uniform can hide a face. A number can erase a name. A rule can silence a question. A group can make cruelty feel like loyalty. A role can make someone feel less responsible for what they do inside it. That does not remove responsibility. It makes responsibility more important. The danger is not that people suddenly become monsters. The danger is that they can do harmful things while still feeling ordinary. They can hurt someone and call it discipline, humiliate someone and call it procedure, ignore suffering and call it the system. This is why the Stanford Prison Experiment still matters, even with all its problems. Not because it is perfect science or because it gives us a simple answer about human nature. It asks why people behave differently under authority, why some obey cruel systems and why others resist. The real world is full of roles: boss and worker, officer and prisoner, teacher and student, doctor and patient, leader and follower. But every role comes with a danger. Power does not magically transform every person into something evil, but power changes the room. It changes what people expect from you. It changes what you think you can get away with. It changes how others react when you speak. And if nobody questions it, power can turn into permission. Permission to mock, punish, humiliate, and dehumanize. Permission to say, that is just how things work here. The experiment is remembered as a story about guards and prisoners, but maybe it is really a story about permission. The permission to let a role speak louder than your judgment, to stop seeing another person clearly, and to become smaller than your conscience. The experiment did not prove that everyone is secretly evil, that cruelty is automatic, or that a uniform can erase the person underneath it. The real story is messier than that. But maybe the messiness is the point. Cruelty rarely arrives by announcing itself as cruelty. It arrives as a rule, a routine, a command, a joke, a punishment, a policy, a costume, or a role. By the time someone asks who is responsible, everyone can point somewhere else. The rules, the guard, the experiment, or the system itself. That might be the real warning. Not that power always turns people cruel, but that cruelty becomes easier when people can hide inside a role. So maybe the question is not only what really happened in the experiment, maybe the question is what happens when the world gives us permission to stop seeing each other as people. Because sometimes people do not need to become monsters. They only need to be told they are doing what they are supposed to do.